Hey YouTube, this is Spooky Panda and bringing you the fourth episode to how to TW as an archer. And in this episode we're going to look at survivability and how to survive in TW as an archer. Survivability is probably one of the most important things for an archer because we can deal a lot of damage just by auto-attacking, but in order to deal that damage you have to be alive. And surviving as an archer, being LA, so we are prone to both magical and physical damage, could be quite tough. If you get this right, then you'll do very well as an archer. The first thing I want to talk about is when to engage. I don't mean just trying to take out people who are better geared than you. You can do that. I'm more talking about like if there are two of you versus a whole squad of people coming out of their opponent's base. Don't be a hero and try and take all of them out by yourselves. It's probably best to avoid engagement in that situation and wait for backup, or just to stall them a little bit until you can get backup. It's also probably not wise to engage an enemy target, or even more stupidly a group of enemy targets with a very low chi while your genie's on cooldown and without buffs, because archers are very prone to getting killed while unbuffed without chi and genie skills on cooldown, so that's something else to factor in as well. You want to know when to pull back from attack. Take an example of, say, stunning arrow or aim low on like a melee target. As soon as your stun or freeze lock has worn off, you want to retreat because you don't really want to get hit as an archer, especially if you're not like +10 Jade of Steady Fenced, or even if you're Jade of Steady Fenced, if you're not buffed, you don't want to take a lot of damage because you still can get 2 or 3 hit. Second thing is that if you're going to barrage, you should probably consider barraging with immunity most of the time. The only exception to this is probably if you're going to kill the group of people you're barraging on in one iteration or before they can get to you. The reason being is that while under barrage you cannot move and you cannot use any other skills and you cannot use a pot. You can still pot and use genie skills, but you're still locked down essentially, and the animation of barrage is pretty flashy, so if the opponents are smart, they're going to prioritize you as soon as you put that barrage up. So you probably want to go into barrage with Iron Guard or Penguin's Essence or something similar, or at the very least have Absolute Domain ready so you can use it when it's needed. Third thing, and one of the most important things, is take advantage of your range. You want to stay at max range if possible, because that makes getting away much easier if you come under attack. So if you're at max range, you might only take 1 or 2 hits before you can get away, whereas if you're, say, 25 meters, that might be 4 or 5 hits or 10 hits if it's like a gank. So it's really key to surviving, especially if you're squishy, and it also makes kiting easier. Kiting as an archer is essential. It makes you avoid getting hit, and that's one of the key things to surviving. If you don't get hit, you probably wouldn't die. Another benefit of staying at max range is that if you're at max range dealing on a target, because archers have one of the longest ranges in PWI, you shouldn't really be getting hit by a lot of people, especially if you're dealing on their frontline DD as an archer. You shouldn't really be getting hit at all. Along with Holy Path and Velocity, the key skill, another 2 key skills to kiting is your Morai leaps. I would recommend assigning them to Q and E key just for easier moving forward and moving backwards. If you use D and Q, that makes me go forward. If I use D and E, that makes me go backwards. And I just find that much easier to use for leap left and right to go back and forwards. Avoid getting stunned is also very key to surviving as an archer. If you're stunned, you cannot use a pot, skills, or potions, and the only thing that you can use is genie skills, and often you can only use 1 or 2 genie skills before you run out of energy or into cooldowns and stuff. What I find very often, if I get stunned in TW for any serious amount of time, it's either by an assassin or a BM. With a BM, it's very dangerous because often, if they're rushing in to stun you, they probably got a group of DDs ready to AoE that group as soon as you're stunned. and it might be coupled with Heaven's Flame as well. So if you can avoid that initial stun and get out of there, you can also avoid the follow-up AoEs. With the Assassin, it's slightly more difficult, but with Assassins, you don't often get a group of rank 9 DDs that's backing them up. So in a way, I find BMs coming at you in TW slightly more dangerous. With the Royal Pride, it's very easy to with Royal Pride, it's very easy to combat that. If a BM is rushing into a group of people, they're most likely going to open with Royal Pride. If you got Fortify on your Genie, you can just use that when they come in, and you'll probably resist the stun with ease. You can also leap away or just run away when you see them coming into the group to avoid that stun. And if you can avoid that stun, then probably 7 out of 10 times you can avoid dying. Another key skill to surviving is Wings of Grace. A lot of people forget that it also carries a 30% damage reduction as well as the anti-movement debuff with it. If you're under Wings of Grace and you're properly geared with buffs, you're very hard to kill in this condition, because Wings of Grace means that you can't be held down with stun and freeze, and also you get a 30% damage reduction, which is similar to a BB, the regeneration aura from the cleric. So it's very hard to kill you if you're in Wings of Grace. Use it sparingly because it has a 30-second cooldown and uses 1 spark, but don't deprive yourself of it, because if you're dead you lose all your chi anyway. I also like to stress the importance of having a defense Genie for TW. I think quite a lot of my survivability is actually down to my Genie and how I use it. I mean, 6 out of the 8 skills I have on my Genie are purely defensive, and the other 2 I use mostly in a defensive manner anyway. I mean, Cloud Eruption, I like to use that to build chi, so I don't get raped if I get caught, because then I can just go into Wings of Grace and probably tank the damage for another 5 or 10 seconds, which is enough time for my charm to tick. If you haven't checked out my Genie guide, I recommend you do so, because I pretty much cover all the skills I think that are useful to archers in that guide. I really don't think archers benefit from having an offense Genie for TW, because I think our damages are already high enough, and most of the offensive Genie skills have a range on them anyway. I mean, Extreme Poison, if I recall correctly, has a 25-meter range, and one thing I recommended to survive is to stay at max range. So if you're in range to use Extreme Poison, you're probably making yourself quite vulnerable, and you can do just as well if you're staying at 32 meters away. Magical and physical defense charms made from perfect stones improve survivability quite a lot regardless of the gear you have. They reduce the very next hit, be it magical or physical, the damage by 50%, so a 20k crit on Black Ice Dragon Strike could be reduced to 10k, which means that could be the difference between one hitting and not hitting. It could also be the difference between getting charm bypassed and surviving with a charm tick. One last thing is that stealth autorexia thing. It's pretty situational and depends from TW to TW and server to server. On Raging Tide there aren't that many level 104, level 105 assassins, so I can use autorexia and stealth momentarily to let my charm tick before re-engaging their enemies. If you're on Lost City and you're only a level 103 archer or below, it might not work for you. Whereas on Raging Tide, it's quite plausible for a level 103 archer to use stealth and be able to survive for another 10 seconds before re-engaging the enemy. I hope this episode helped you guys and will improve your gameplay, hopefully improve your survivability as well. The next episode of How to TW as an Archer will be uploaded next Tuesday instead, so subscribe and stay tuned.